Welcome everyone to today's training. We are here to explore social media's role in supporting educational growth. It's become such a big part of our lives, and we are excited to hear your perspective on its benefits and challenges in learning. We have three insightful panelists with us today, which is AFIFAH, a high school student, Mrs. IZZAH, mother of two teenagers, and FILZA, an educational content creator. So, let's start with introductions. AFIFAH, would you kick us off?
Hi, I'm Senior AFIFAH. I'm currently a high school student, and social media has become a really important part of my everyday life, especially when it comes to learning. It's not just a way to keep in touch with a friend, it's actually a huge help for my studies too. For example, I follow accounts that focus on science and math. They break down complex topics into short, understandable videos, which help a lot, especially with difficult concepts. Plus, I'm part of several online study groups with students from different places, so we can exchange ideas, share resources, and even help each other with assignment. This is especially helpful because it lets us connect beyond our classroom and learn together, regardless of where we are from. For students like me, it's really expand our resources and make learning a bit more exciting and interactive.
Thank you, AFIFAH. Yes, absolutely. Social media really does open up some unique ways to learn. Mrs. IZZAH, would you mind sharing your experience?
Oh, hello everyone. I'm IZZAH, and as a mother of two teenagers, I've watched how social media has become a big part of their lives. I can see the benefits like how they have access to expert resources that can help with schoolwork and even life skills. Back when I was a student, nothing like this existed, so I'm truly amazed at the wealth of knowledge available to them. However, I'm also aware of the potential for distraction and misinformation. As a parent, my approach has been to guide them in making good choices about the content they consume. For instance, we often sit down and look at the accounts they are following to make sure they are trustworthy and relevant to their goals. I want them feel supported, so I encourage open conversation about what they see and learn online. This way, they feel comfortable asking questions if they come across something they are unsure about. It's a balancing act. I want them feel mindful managed, but I do want them to be mindful and focused when they are using social media for learning.
Sounds like a balancing guidance with makers, which is important. So, FILZA, would you share your perspective as an educational content creator?
I create educational content on social media through platforms like Instagram and YouTube. My goal is to make learning feel accessible and enjoyable. I focus on creating short, interactive videos with topics which require science and business. I know students have limited time and attention spans, especially online. My approach is to use visuals, relatable examples, and quizzes to keep them engaged. For instance, I will often take a compact topic and break it into smaller sections, so students don't feel overwhelmed, but still walk away with strong understanding. So, engagement is key for me. I try to get students involved by asking questions and encouraging them to discuss or comment on what they have learned. This way, they have actively thinking and process recent. I also work hard to ensure that everything I share is accurate, and I often cite credible sources or provide links for students to guide people. I am passionate about using social media is a learning tool, and I believe that it can really enhance traditional education by making it more learning and interactive.
Thanks, FILZA. It's interesting to see how education content can be engaging and accurate. Now, let's dive into our first topic on the benefits of social media in learning. To kick things off, let's talk about the benefits social media brings to education. AFIFAH, could you start by sharing how social media helps in your studies?
Sure. Social media has honestly changed how I approach learning. In the past, studying meant spending hours reading through thick textbooks or relying on just the material I got in class. But now, social media opens up this whole world of educational content that's accessible anytime and anywhere. For example, I follow several accounts that specialize in subjects like math, science, and even history. They make these short, engaging videos that break down complex topics into simple, understandable steps. This really helps me grasp difficult content, difficult concept quickly, especially when I'm studying alone and need a clear explanation. Beyond just following educational pages, social media has also allowed me to join online study and communities of students who are just as invested in learning. I have studied study from different parts of the world, and we constantly exchange ideas, share study tips, and even tackle difficult assignments together. It's amazing because I get to see different perspectives and learning methods. Plus, having that support system online is motivating. I think social media has really opened doors for students like me to explore topics in depth, ask questions, and get feedback in ways we couldn't in a traditional classroom.
That's a great point. But social media definitely offers some unique opportunities for collaborative and community-based learning. This is example. What is your perspective as a parent?
Thank you. Well, I think social media can be an incredible resources for students today. When I was younger, if we wanted to learn something beyond what was taught in school, we had to search for books in the library or rely on limited resources we had at hand. Now, with social media, students have access to an entire world of information. They are experts from all kinds of fields, sharing their knowledge, tutorials, and even conducting live Q&A sessions where students can get answers in the real time. It's amazing how quickly they can learn new things from science, maths, to language and history. However, as a parent, I'm also cautious. The same platform that provide educational resources also hosts a lot of distracting and misleading content. So, to help my children make the most of these resources without getting sidetracked, we have regular discussions about the content they are following. We talk about the types of accounts that are trustworthy and how to recognize quality education content. I encourage them to stay focused and use social media in a way that supports their studies rather than distract from it. They know they can come to me if they come across something questionable, and we try to keep an open line of communication about what they are learning online. In that way, I hope I'm guiding them to use social media as a positive educational tool while they feel they have some independence in managing their time and interests.
It sounds like you are finding a balance between guidance and independence, which is crucial. FILZA, as a content creator, how do you approach making your material both educational and engaging for students?
As a content creator, my main goal is to make learning goals accessible and enjoyable. I know students today are with so much content, so I try to create videos that are short, interactive, and most importantly, related to their needs. I focus on breaking down topics into simpler examples. These are quick lessons that can hold their attention without overwhelming them. For example, if I'm explaining historical event, I will use visuals and animation to highlight key moments, making the narrative easier to follow and remember. Or if I'm covering science topic, I will often use relatable everyday examples that help students connect with the materials. Engagement is also a top priority for me. I want students to feel like they have part of the learning process rather than just basic words. To do this, I often include interactive elements like quizzes and questions and at the end of my videos, when I ask students to comment on what they have learned or share their own thoughts. This creates a space for students to discuss, reflect, and even help each other. I also prioritize accuracy by sourcing information from credible resources, and sometimes I include citations or links so that students can explore further if they're interested. For me, it's about creating content that not only educates but also builds curiosity. My aim is for students to live feeling inspired to learn more, not just to memorize facts, but to actually understand and apply what we have learned. I think social media has amazing potential for education as long as the content is engaging and carefully crafted.
Thank you, FILZA. It's inspiring to see how much thought and creativity goes into making educational content that students can actually enjoy and trust. Now, let's transition to some of the challenges that come with using social media in education. Now, let's explore some of the challenges that come with social media for learning. AFIFAH, can you start by sharing any difficulties you have encountered?
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest challenges for me is managing distractions. Social media platforms are designed to keep us scrolling, and sometimes it's hard to stay focused. I might start with a specific goal in mind, like watching a video on a science concept, but before I know it, I'm watching random videos or checking out memes. It's so easy to get off track, especially with so much non-educational content. I try to remind myself to stay focused, but it's definitely a challenge to stay disciplined when there's so much content competing for attention. Another issue I face is verifying information. Not everything I see online is reliable. And unfortunately, there are accounts that post misleading or overly simplified content. For example, I've seen study tips that sound great, but are not actually backed and by any real science. This means I often have to double check the facts by cross-referencing with other resources, which can be time-consuming. And for certain topics, it's hard to know if what I'm seeing is accurate unless I spend a lot of time researching. It's frustrating because it's hard to tell at a glance if the content is coming from a trustworthy source. So, while social media can be a great learning tool, there are definitely some extra steps involved to make sure I'm actually getting relevant information.
Yeah. Distraction and misinformation are definitely common issues with social media. Mrs. IZZAH, as a parent, how do you help your kids navigate these challenges?
Wow, that's a great question. I think the key for me has been to find a balance between staying involved in my children's online activities and giving them enough independence to manage their learning. One of the main strategies we use at home is setting a few simple guidelines, like using social media primarily for educational purposes during study hours. This helps create a boundary between learning and leisure, so they know there are the time for each. We also include scheduled breaks so they are not constantly online, which I think reduces likelihood of drifting into non-educational content. Another thing I focus on is encouraging open communication. I want my kids to feel comfortable talking to me about what they are hearing, including anything confusing or questionable they might encounter. We have regular conversation where they can share what they are watching or discuss new things they have heard. It's a chance for them to reflect on the content and for me to offer guidance when needed. I also make it a point to discuss the importance of choosing trustworthy sources so they understand the need to be critical thinkers when it comes to information online. I think it's essential for parents to show an active interest in their children's online learning without being too intrusive. This way, they feel supported and more likely to develop responsible habits in choosing what content to engage with.
It sounds like setting boundaries and maintaining open conversations with your kids is a thoughtful approach, Ms. IZZAH. FILZA, how do you address these challenges as a content creator, ensuring your content is both accurate and encourage positive engagement?
That's a great question, and it is something I put a lot of thought into. First, the first thing is absolutely critical to me, especially because I need my audience release on my content as trustworthy source. To make sure information I provide is correct, I research each topic thoroughly and always source my information from credible places. Credible places like academic journal, reputable websites, or official educational platforms. When I encounter complex topics, I sometimes add links or references to official resources in my caption or comments, so students can double check the facts themselves if they want to go deeper. This transparency is important to me because I want students to feel confident that they have learning from a reliable source. In terms of engagement, I try to foster a learning environment within the comment sessions. I encourage students to ask questions, share their thoughts, or even discuss their interpretations of what they have learned. For example, after watching a video on the historical topic, I might ask viewers to comment on how they think that it will shape the modern world, or after explaining a science concept, I might ask how they see it applied in everyday life. This approach keeps students actively involved, making them think critically about the content instead of the specifically consuming it. I also make an effort to monitor the comments and address the misunderstanding as they come up. When I see common questions or misconceptions, I will reply directly on sometimes even make a follow-up video to clarify the point. I think it is a powerful way to keep the learning accurate and interactive, and it makes students feel like they are part of a learning community. I want my content to stay productive space where students can learn, ask questions, and engage thoughtfully with each other. Social media has so much potential as an educational tool, but I believe it's our responsibility as content creators to share that space in a way that benefits learners.
Thank you, FILZA. It's inspiring to hear how much care and effort goes into creating content that's both accurate and engaging. Now that we have covered both the benefits and challenges of social media in education, let's take a deeper look into some practical strategies and tips for maximizing its positive impact. So let's make this segment a bit more interactive. I'd like each of you to share a practical tip that will work for you in using social media in a healthy, productive way. AFIFAH, could you start this?
Of course. For me, one of the best ways to keep my social media use in check is by setting a daily time limit, about 2 hours maximum for all platforms combined. This really helped me avoid the endless scrolling track. I find that if I don't set a limit, it's easy to lose track of time, and I end up spending more time online than I intended. Another thing that been helpful is organizing my feed. I actually went through and follow more educational channels, so those follow up first. My feed now start with study tips, interesting facts, and subject-specific content that help with school. Seeing that educational content first thing keeps me focused and motivated. Plus, because I've curated my feed, I'm less tempted to jump into non-educational content while I'm in study mode. It's not perfect, but this approach definitely helps for me to use social media in a way that feels more intentional and balanced.
Well, it's a smart approach to FIFAH. Using timely ways and arranging your feet to prioritize reading is a great way to stay focused. This is design. As a parent, one of the tips you have recommend for helping kids manage their social media use effectively.
Thank you, Nadia. One thing I found helpful as parents is encouraging my kids to follow a select number of trusted educational accounts. We actually go over these accounts together, especially when they want to follow a new one. I do a quick review to make sure the content is accurate and age appropriate. This way, the same educational content that aligns with their studies and values. It also means that social media becomes more of a learning tool rather than just an entertainment source. In addition to that, I set a personal example by setting my own time limits on social media. I want my kids to see that I'm not asking them to do something that I'm not willing to do myself. I think this helps reinforce the idea that healthy social media habits are for everyone in the household, not just for the children. We have certain times during the day where we all put our devices down, like during meals or family activities, which really helps to create a more balanced environment. By managing my own screen time and showing them how I balance it with other parts of my life, I hope to model healthy behavior for them. It's also not always easy, but I believe it's worth it.
Well, it's a great point, Mrs. Susan. So the invite is important for students that for the week can really have make a healthy into the environment. FILZA is a content creator. Do you have any advice for students and parents looking to make the most of social media without feeling overwhelmed?
Absolutely. What piece of advice I have give to both students and parents is to look for accounts that realize additional content with an engaging presentation. For students, this keeps the learning process enjoyable and interactive, which can improve relation. I try to make my own content visually appealing and interactive for this reason. When learning is engaging, students are more likely to remember what they have seen. So I recommend finding creators who use creative visuals, quizzes, or an example real life situations. This makes social media learning fun and memorable rather than a chore. Another big tip is take regular screen breaks, especially after watching or engaging with educational content. Pausing for even a few minutes allows your brain to process the information you have just learned, which helps reinforce it. After a session of social media learning, it's a good habit to step away, reflect, or even jot down a few notes on what you found interesting or relevant. This can make a big difference in how well you retain the information and helps keep social media from feeling overwhelming. I think it is important for both students and parents to see that social media is a tool that can be used with intention. and taking breaks or reflecting afterward can prevent mental overload.
FILZA, prioritizing, prioritizing engaging content and incorporating screen breaks to reflect on learning are both valuable tools. I appreciate all of your practical insights. They are a great reminders of how we can make social media a more productive space for education. So, we have discussed the current role of social media in education, but what about looking forward? AFIFAH, as a student, how do you think social media changing the way students learn in the future?
For me, I think social media is going to become even more personalized in how it supports learning. With AI and algorithm advancement, social media platforms could start customizing educational content based on each student's children focus or curriculum. For instance, if I'm studying biology, one week I'm preparing for a math exam the next, I could see social media adapting to that by suggesting specific study statistics, quizzes, or resources that are relevant to those subjects. There might even be reminders or notifications that alert me when new content related on my study topics is available. Additionally, I think we will see more interactive gamified learning experience on social media, like virtual study groups or challenges that students can participate in to earn badge or points. This could make studying feel less solitary and more engaging, especially for students who may not have as many academic resources in their local community. Another interesting possibility is social media might offer live, real-time tutorial session through video or chat features. Imagine logging into an app and having access to expert or study groups whenever you need help on a difficult topic. The idea of a more responsive, customizable learning experience is really exciting, and I think it could make learning even more accessible and fun for students everywhere.
Just an inspiring vision, but it's exciting to think about how AI and personalization might transform study into a more tailored, engaging experience. As a parent, do you think these types of advancements will help support students and make it easier for parents and teachers to guide them?
Yes, I do believe that this advancement hold a lot of promise for students, parents, and educators alike. With more personalized learning tools on social media, parents and teachers could have new ways to support students in very targeted and efficient way. For example, if social media algorithm could recommend content based on each student's strength and weaknesses, it would allow parents and teachers to guide students to resource that address their specific needs. Imagine a platform that knows which topics your child struggles with and automatically suggests tutorial videos, practice questions, or interactive activities to reinforce those areas. It would make supplemental learning so much easier to manage. That way, I think for parents to be actively involved. We will need to have conversation with our children about balancing screen time, privacy, and responsible use. At the end of the day, this tool can be wonderful aids, but we will still need to set boundaries and teach our children to use them thoughtfully. The future is bright, but it's important that we continue guiding our kids in the right direction, even as technology evolves.
That's an excellent point, Mrs. Izzah. As promising as these tools are, it's essential to combine them with guidance and balance. FILZA, as a content creator, how do you foresee its future advancements shaping educational content on social media?
I am really excited about the potential with advancements in AI and other technologies. I think content creation is on the verge of transformation that could make learning through accessibility or more immersive and hands-on experience. For example, imagine being able to create content that allows students to simulate experiments, interact with 3D models, or even participate in virtual retreat, all through the social media feed. Students could learn concepts by doing rather than just watching, which would make their learning experience from interactive and memorable. Moreover, if they understand the analyze feedback and engagement patterns, I think content creators will have better insight into what's working and what's not. This data could help us adjust content so it is as effective as possible for students. For instance, if a lot of students struggle with a particular concept in AI could highlight such as ways to break it down even further. We could also incorporate quizzes, discuss prompts, or reflection points that encourage active participation, making the learning process feel like a collaborative experience between students and creators. And as more educators and professionals come to social media, we can even see collaborative class lessons where students can ask questions in real time, almost like virtual classroom. The future of social media is education will very exciting, and I think it will allow content creators like me to deliver much richer, more effective, and engaging learning experience. We are moving toward a time where social media could offer a really interactive and high-quality supplementary professional education, and I'm thrilled to be part of it.
Thank you, FILZA. It is incredible to hear how this advancement could bring the new depth and interactivity education content. It sounds like the future of social media and learning is filled with opportunities for personalization, immersion, and even collaboration, making education accessible and engaging in entirely before we wrap up, I'd like to ask each of you for a closing thought on how social media can best support learning and growth. What will start with
Thank you. Social media has been an incredible resource for me and for many other students. It brings so many subjects to life and makes it easy to connect with other learners, find resources, and get help on tough topics. But I've also learned that to make the most of it, you really have to set boundaries and be disciplined. It is easy to fall into the trap of endlessly scrolling through unrelated content, which can end up wasting a lot of time. So, I would like to encourage students to follow accounts that genuinely support their learning goals, set limits on how long they spend on each platform, and also maybe they can even create a list of study goals that want to be achieved each time they log on for learning. Used wisely, social media is not just a fun way to learn, but can really inspire and motivate you. So stay focused, but also enjoy the process. It's amazing what you can discover.
Thank you, AFIFAH. Staying focused and intentional really does seem deep. It's apparent. What would you like to leave us with?
Parents, I think the most important thing is to be actively involved in how our children are using social media, but in a way that fosters trust rather than control. It's easy to feel concerned about all the risks out there, but if we focus too much on restrictions, our kids might feel like they have to hide things from us. Instead, I believe in having open conversation. I like to sit down with my kids, review which accounts they follow, and talk about content they are consuming. I also set a good example by showing how I use social media thoughtfully by limiting my own screen time and focusing on constructive content. So social media isn't going away. So as a parents, we have a responsibility to guide our children in using it responsibly, making sure it enhances their life rather than distracts from it. If we build that relationship based on trust and openness, they are more likely to come to us when they have questions or face issues online. It's about creating a supportive environment where they feel comfortable using social media to learn and grow safely. Yes.
There's a great advance. There's a great advance in India. Looking the foundation of trust really seems distinction. FILZA, as someone creating content for students, what final thought would you like to share with us?
I truly believe that social media has the power to refine education and make learning accessible to so many more people around the world. But to make this vision a reality, content creators, educators, and even the platform themselves need to prioritize quality and engagement over just popularity. For me, that means continually finding ways to make content that's not only educational but also interactive, relatable, and adaptable to different learning styles. I hope that as technology advances, social media platforms will start to offer even more tools that support deep learning, such as interactive modules like live Q&A even real-time feedback option. This would allow students to compare basic consumption and actually engage with the material on a deeper level. At the same time, I think it is important for creators like myself to keep our audiences accountable. For example, I encourage my followers to take breaks, reflect on what they have learned, and apply it in their studies or daily life. Social media can be a powerful tool for learning if we use it with purpose. So my advice to students and parents, like is stay curious, for finding content, and don't be afraid to engage with creators or any other learners. Social media can truly support lifelong learning, but it is up to all of us to make it a meaningful part in our educational journey.
Alright, thank you, FILZA. Thank you, AFIFAH, and also thank you, Mrs. IZZAH, for your valuable insights and advice. It is clear that social media offers tremendous potential for learning, but making the most of it requires focus, balance, and collaboration between students, parents, and educators. And thank you to everyone who joined us today. It's inspiring to see how we can use this platform to empower and educate each other. Thank you. Thank you.
Are you down for this?
I actually went through and followed the more additional channels. So those rather than entertaining.
Social media learning fun. Learning fun and